Hello. How are we all doing, everybody? Let me know if we sound all good and clear and everything. I see a few of you guys have been in here for a little while. A few of you guys have left some super chats. I'll look at those in a little bit. Um, Interesting day again. Interesting day. Looks like we're doing good in the chat. I see that. I noticed some of you who tagged me today on X and in the comment sections. And I also see someone saying time to cut the beard. Give it a week. Give it a week, and I probably will. Um, but I noticed a lot of you guys that tagged me with your YouTube recap, so thank you. I appreciate it. Uh, I gotta say, yesterday, and I know a few of you guys in chat were maybe not happy with me saying that I thought that yesterday went pretty well for the most part for NASCAR side. I think I went against the grain of a few people in the media side and in the chat that said that I didn't think that it went as well for Denny as many uh, were saying it did, just based on what others were describing, the words, the back and forth, stuff like that. I gotta say, if we're looking from an outsider perspective again, when it comes to what it looked like today, I think today went much more in the team's favor than NASCAR's. Uh, Again, nothing is 100% by any means in any of this, but I do think that today, when we looked at the remaining back and forth with NASCAR Executive VP Scott Prime, when you look at Bob Jenkins, I really think that it went much better for the team. So we're going to talk about day 3 of what seemingly will be a slow, monotonous, and endless lawsuit, and court dealings. But also there's other news, we kind of talked about it on NWP, at least in reckless speculation from a super chat of Gabehart leaving JGR. That has been confirmed by Jenna Fryer today. We have some silly season news as well, paint scheme news. We'll show all of that. I like he should cut the beard because the Vikings are about to be out of playoff contention. And that's exactly why. Once they're eliminated, I cut it off every year, whether it's eliminated from the playoffs, in the playoffs, or because they suck ass like this year. But I want to go in and talk about the big news of the day before we do anything else too much on here. And I do think that if I have it ready to go, I think we should start with the tweet or X post that Denny Hamlin put out last night at like midnight. Uh, he put, quote, "My lawyers don't want me to tweet or X or whatever this is, but they are asleep. I just want to tell you all, I love you guys, and I will not stop fighting for you and what is right." And that currently has 12,000 plus likes, over 1,000 retweets, so almost 1,000 comments. And scrolling through the comments section right now, it's pretty heavy in the favor of Denny Hamlin, though a few people saying maybe you should have listened to your lawyers, pals. Um, so I gotta say, with Denny on that one, again, I thought yesterday went, at best lukewarm for him, probably a little worse than that, or worse for wear at least. Um, it probably was not the smartest to put that out there. But at the same time, Denny Hamlin and the teams have definitely, if this is any proof, have slam dunked the court of public approval. Now that doesn't matter at the end of the day when it comes to what we're talking about, when it comes to the way that this all plays out long term, but that is at least worth noting. And it's kind of amazing to me. And by the way, I'm just keeping my phone on just in case there's any other things that pop out at any point. But it is kind of amazing to me that Denny Hamlin, of all people, is winning the hearts, minds, and souls of NASCAR fans. So there is that. And yeah, I mean, I guess, people are saying NASCAR could use that against Hamlin. I don't know if like him tweeting this late in the game, if they would. NASCAR side got in trouble today. And we'll kind of get onto that a little bit as well. it was not a good look, I don't think, for the NASCAR side of things today. Uh, we're going to bounce around again like we have the last couple days. I will again repeat what I've said for it's got to be what, a year and a half now. We've been talking about the same damn thing. Not a legal expert, yada yada yada. You know, I'm just interpreting this the best that I can. But we'll start with Scott Prime, and kind of the bouncing around that we had here. There was talk at different points of, say, the teams wanting of $20 million paid out per car, per charter, which I believe would math out to 720 mil a year, which would be pretty damn difficult for NASCAR to do. In their words, it would bankrupt NASCAR. It's going to be interesting to see, how that would have played out and what the best number possible could have been. But when it comes to charter options and different things for the negotiations, there were 5 big points that he and other execs like Steve Phelps and others had. One was declare NASCAR going down to 32 charters. First come, first serve. Whoever gets your charters, there'll be 4 losers in that. Basically putting pressure on the teams to sign, because if they don't, or if they're slow to it, they lose their charters. There is go to 32 teams and allow them to select the terms of it. Update the agreement to reflect the terms NASCAR liked and instituted at the deadline. Otherwise, offer a deal to the teams that's, again, more NASCAR's favor. Go back to open, which is basically back to what they did pre-charter system, abolish it altogether, and just whoever makes it in, makes it in. I would assume at that point you wouldn't probably do like a top 35 in owners points. You might just go back to like old school provisionals. Even if you had that problem, other than the Daytona 500, you wouldn't have the problem of teams qualifying in, because we at most during the year would have like 40 cars at a few races here and there. And then of course the gold codes, where NASCAR owns all the cars, hires all the drivers, brings in all the sponsor money, hires all the team. They own everything at that point. And Phelps saying basically, thanks for this. The teams are playing with fire. Again, another just gold standard quote by Steve Phelps in emails he thought would never be viewed. And you kind of see that back and forth and animosity that Phelps in particular has had with them. I don't know how far any of this would really play, but the fact that like the gold codes want to basically like, we're just going to take control of everything and box the owners out. That will be interesting to see, I think, how it plays out at this point. So I'm interested to see where that goes. They did talk about as well, if permanent charters were given, the charter value would soar up to over $100 million per charter based on their calculations. Rather than what they have now of it lasts through the agreement, but not permanent with the way that we're talking about. There was also letters, one from RFK, but back then it was Roush Fenway Racing, arguing the business model was not sustainable and kind of urging NASCAR for a new one. Other teams had sent letters kind of saying the same things. And Prime had said that basically if they didn't like it, they didn't have to sign it, was the way that they put it. Kessler definitely, from the sound of it, grilled the hell out of Prime in this proceeding today and in the back and forth. I think he was up there for like 3 hours or so. And they brought up other pieces, like for instance, it would for instance, talking about a price cap or how much the teams spend and how they're having to basically spend themselves out of business in a lot of ways. They brought up what I like to call pit gun communism, or what led up to it. Basically, there was an arms race over getting their pit guns faster. I believe it was Joe Gibbs Racing that did that back around 2018-19, before they had universal pit guns, to kind of even out the playing field again. And so they're spending millions of dollars to gain not even a second, but maybe a few tenths on any given year race on pit road. And so they brought up like, well, why wasn't there a cost cap? He said when asked about a cost cap, the teams couldn't agree on a set number. Though did admit that once there was a cost cap in place and they were able to get it under control in Formula One, the value of those teams did go up since then. And you got to remember too, like again, I keep reiterating this. We are racing fans. We understand racing. We understand what the team owners are talking about. We understand what the drivers are talking about. But when you look at it from an outside point of view, that the jury is going to look at it with, who is not in the day-to-day of NASCAR, who is not following it the way that you guys are, or that I am, or that anyone that you watch on YouTube is, or journalists are. It's probably easier to connect that one-to-one. So that might be more of a win for the teams than it would actually be to people who know what they're talking about with it, the way that, a lot of us would. Looking at some of the other notes I have here, again, I apologize. I'm all over the place here. Prime, the VP from NASCAR, exec VP, kind of got caught in some lies today too, or if not lies, contradictions. At least there were a lot of contradictions in what he talked about. He said that the teams didn't request more broadcast money with the 2016 agreement, but a 2015 letter that the teams had sent to NASCAR during the initial negotiation for it showed completely the opposite. Kind of when pushed on this, he had said that, he's unsure. He wasn't working there at the time. And Kessler had a good line saying if he's because Prime said he was unaware, not unsure, unaware. And Kessler had a great line saying if he's unaware, why did he go along and act as if he was aware in this and in his questioning? And of course, a lot of his answers when he was cornered were, I don't know about that. I'm unsure. I don't know, which based again on a very surface level research, I will admit, I'm not going to probably be able to ever learn as much of it as somebody who's an expert in the field. But a lot of times people are basically tell you beforehand, like if you're caught in a lie or a contradiction or something, you can say you were unaware because it's hard to prove that you were unaware, unsure, whatnot. So that's probably why that happened a lot during this. But again, not very good. It wasn't terribly good for him yesterday. I think today was worse based on the reporting. And you saw it from Toby Christie, Joseph Wrigley, Jeff Gluck, Bob Pockris, all of them on the ground. I think Peter, I know he's been there for a lot of it. He's been in the chat. But overall, I think a pretty big win when you look at what at least we have gotten to learn and hear about. Pretty big win for the teams on that respect. Bob Jenkins, I think, was the star of the day, though. Bob Jenkins, from the sound of it, had gained a lot of sentiment. And it seems like, based on what a lot of NASCAR media was saying today, that Bob Jenkins was almost seen as like a underdog figure to the jury and seen as somebody who was, basically just a great American story, which I think is a perfect way, if the teams wanted to frame it for him and to go forward with that. He had talked about he has never made a profit while being a NASCAR team owner. And he's been a NASCAR fan forever. I remember there was like stories of him being a fan back in the 90s and 2000s. I think he was the one that had been talked about like a few weeks ago. People had brought up, had been an initial member of like the Dale Earnhardt fan club. So he'd been around for a long time as just a fan. And looking at what he's talking about, I mean, the fact that he's never made a profit, lost there was a bunch of numbers being flown around, lost $16 million over a couple of years, loses roughly $6.8 million per year. Had 9 unsponsored races for 2025. So he'd put his own team or his own businesses that he owned, the stickers or the team, the business names on them, just because it's been shown that running blank cars doesn't help. when it comes to drawing in new sponsors. It doesn't. There's a reason you don't see them anymore, even though you'll see, say, Ford sponsor a few races for a Ford team, or you'll see like a Toyota Camry just with a bunch of Toyota stuff on it once in a blue moon for the top 2 series. Or in this aspect, you have the companies that Bob Jenkins has owned. Look back in the past, he did the same thing with Taco Bell, with Long John Silver's, and I think he has still done that with Long John Silver's because his 4 sons own that company now. But he had talked about the difference as well between the Gen 6 era and the next gen era. And this to me is pretty damning for NASCAR, not even just in the court side of things, but the narrative we as fans have been sold by NASCAR for the majority of the time we've heard about the next gen. So kind of trip down memory lane for us fans. When the next gen like platform was instituted in the Cup Series, one of the big selling points was we're going to lower the cost for teams, make it easier over time for entry, like all these great promises. But there were guys like Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin who were kind of blowing the whistle like, I don't know if this is really the case. Kyle Busch flat out said, like, it's not cheaper. It's more expensive than ever to be a car owner. A lot of people like, well, upfront costs, and then it'll get better from there and even out. The numbers show pre-next gen, Bob Jenkins spent about $1.8 million a year per year on parts. Now it's $4.7 million a year. I believe it was shown to be about a 267% increase in costs. Costs, for instance, $30K a week to repair non-wrecked cars, as the nose and tails have to be sent back to the vendors because teams aren't able and allowed to repair those parts themselves. So the process has made it more expensive for a team like Front Row. They did, NASCAR side did bring up that Bob Jenkins has made millions of dollars, I believe $12.5 million off charter leases, sales, things like that. He did also quit back, though. He had to do those, at least from his perspective as a business owner, to get them to the next year because of the costs being lost, because of how much money he would be sinking in on any given year. So you'd have to start moving those around, leasing them out, whatever you'd have to do. And I seem to remember, especially the early years of the charter agreement, Front Row doing that a lot. There were some other sides of it too, looking at some of the things that Jenkins and Prime also had talked about with it. With the new charter agreement, there was a 3 strikes rule in the previous one that has since been eliminated, where the teams could come together and vote. And if NASCAR, I think after 3 times, if the teams voted no, they would get that ability to kind of like almost veto any rule that came up that NASCAR would want to institute. That has since been eliminated for the 2025 agreement. So now NASCAR has more power to just unilaterally change rules at will. That could be really big in play with this. If they're in any kind of violation doing so. The fact that you took that power from the teams. And we kind of talked about this on NWP the other night. We've talked about this on some of these other live streams. In a lot of ways, NASCAR has almost taken control just about of every single piece that is major to revenue in their sport. They have a ton of the really big tracks. I mean, Daytona, Talladega, Martinsville, Darlington, some of the biggest tracks you got out there. Plus, I mean, they're the ones that are going out and negotiating with Mexico, with Canada races, with the Chicago street race, San Diego. So they have that side of it. They have the merchandise side of things. They have a lot more control and especially with the IP of it, but altogether just with the next gen car. Even though I believe they said they don't make a profit off of a lot of the single vendor supplier sources. So that was an interesting part of it. But, looking at all of this combined, I mean, it's to me, it's clear that NASCAR had a plan for a long time and have completely enacted said plan. There was also talk too with the charter agreement that you can't compete in other series if you own part of a team or charter. A goodwill clause, which is basically a non-compete agreement clause. This is not just a sports thing. I believe, I mean, I know when I, for instance, kind of getting in the weeds here, when I signed, and much smaller deal, obviously, with an ad agency like 3-4 years ago, I want to say, I had to sign an agreement that like I would not have sponsors that were in the same field or were with that company for like 3 years. It's why I don't have as many sponsors. It's part of the reason why I don't have as many sponsors on my channel. Plus, I'm more thorough now than I used to be, so it's not bad scammy sponsors or ones that don't deliver for the most part what they say. But not technically illegal, unless there's some provision in it that makes it that way that they didn't really go into detail on. But it raised a lot of eyebrows for people being like, wait a minute. So, you're saying, well, if they don't like it, they don't have to sign it and then go race somewhere else. But because they've signed it, they can't go race somewhere else for a year if they don't like it. If I'm kind of getting that right, if you will. And they kind of talked about too, the basically 11th hour gun to the head of the teams to sign the deal, sending them the agreement at 5:00 at night and wanting it signed by 6, and then having to make a little smaller arrangements and having it signed by midnight, kind of knowing that they would not be able to get any kind of legal counsel on a Friday night at that time. And no one be able to read a 120-page document like that in an hour or a few hours, what it turned out to be once they had kind of got those updates. And that Jenkins, quote, had felt hurt by the signing deadline and had felt hurt by NASCAR basically saying they need to keep cutting costs, when in a lot of ways he's been very, penny pinching already, whether it be how the team goes about things or like even the fact, I think they had said like he buys his own ice instead of buying it at the track because it'd be cheaper that way. I don't blame him if you're being smart with it, and they're basically saying you got to keep cutting. At that point, you're just cutting manpower. You're taking people's jobs away. And it doesn't become feasible in a lot of aspects for teams to keep cutting and cutting and cutting because they won't be able to process their weekends, races, seasons the way that they need to. Jenkins also went on, or they went on to kind of hammer him about how, well, he's not at the track. This isn't your full-time job. How can you say what's going on when you're at maximum 12 races a year and you only stop at the shop 6 to 8 times a year? This is what he did in 2025. NASCAR side is kind of claiming that, like I said earlier, given Long John Silver's free advertising and not really paying attention to the day-to-day of his operation in doing so and different ways like that. Jenkins also talked about you can't undercut your sponsors. We kind of saw this in play like in 2021, I want to say it was, or 2020, when Marcus Lemonis was sponsoring all those truck teams with Camping World. So, you can kind of understand where he's coming from with it. You can't just like, offer your kids what is worth $100,000 for $50K or $20K and just give them a great deal and then expect your other sponsors to show up and be like, wait a minute. So they get to have a discount and we don't. It makes sense. But at what point does that prove anything that NASCAR is doing necessarily is illegal? Dirty, but I think that's the point that Kessler and them will have to kind of push through and figure out. Now, there was a really important part that Judge Bell had brought up. NASCAR's legal team violated multiple court orders today when it came to their questioning and different aspects and information they brought up. Twice they did so. First, they revealed quotes from Jeff Dickerson that weren't allowed to be in there because they were from, I believe it was outside of the business of NASCAR. And then they attempted to reveal financial information from Bob Jenkins' businesses outside of NASCAR that he owns, because he owns multiple businesses outside of it, and that severe penalties can be levied towards any of them on NASCAR's legal team if there are any more violations at this point. So, NASCAR already 3 days into this, getting themselves in hot water with the judge. Again, not a legal expert by any means, but that's like the first thing that you hear ever is don't piss off the judge. Don't do something, push that line too far. And that is exactly what NASCAR did today, trying to push the line, trying to, I think, bait Bob Jenkins the way that they baited Denny Hamlin. But the difference is Bob Jenkins has been in business for a while, has went through tense negotiations and other things like that for a while, whereas Denny Hamlin is a much more volatile personality, and it bit NASCAR in the ass today. Again, I do think that, there will be no 100% wins either way in any of the days or the result in any way, but this today was a huge victory for the teams and a huge loss, I think, for NASCAR. I believe Bob Jenkins will still be on the stand tomorrow. I don't know if Richard Childress will. I know Jim France is coming up soon. But I got to say, with all of this kind of adding up to, I saw, was it Shannon McKinney? I'm terrible with names. But she's the lawyer that I know they think that they brought on the teardown recently. I haven't been able to really watch them as much. I got more stuff than just work NASCAR on YouTube during the day. So apologies, I haven't been able to catch up everything they've been saying on it. I hear they're doing a great job. But she had tweeted that Judge Bell needs to get them to pick up the pace, that this could get extended a third week, basically right before Christmas, when they were told it was supposed to be about a 10 to 12 day trial. Which again, 12 would still kind of push it over. But if we're talking about adding days, weeks at this point, it's not going to probably be very good, seeing how everybody was basically ensured it was going to be an X amount of time. It's moving at a glacial pace from at least what experts have talked about with it. So I really hope that is case. I know, again, NASCAR is a series, not a sport. Okay, we'll get into fucking semantics about it. I don't give a shit. Like, who cares about that part? We use the terms interchangeably at this point. As long as I'm not calling the cars themselves a NASCAR, I think we're fine. But I personally, I just agree, because I don't want to listen to this bullshit during the holidays. I don't want to get back from my Christmas break and just be like, oh yeah, we had a nice Christmas. Now back to the freaking grind. Like I don't know about you guys. I don't know, they can appeal and this stuff can be drawn out for freaking ever. I am so sick of NASCAR at this point. I know it's very important. But like, this isn't a murder trial. We're not doing, talking like about something that's going to be on some random girl's, true crime podcast in a year or two. Like, let's just get through this. From the sound of it, the jury seemed, from at least what people were describing, almost bored at this point, which I completely understand why. You're basically stuck for 2, maybe 3 weeks listening to a bunch of legal jargon from a sport that, seeing how they're not NASCAR fans and not MJ, well, maybe MJ fans, but not really MJ fans. And, one of them, his hobby listed was heavy drinking. There's probably no, positivity coming and radiating from them that they're stuck there. I saw people in my comments who were like, skipping jury duty is so lame. And it's like, no, it's not. No, it's not. I don't blame people. I wouldn't want to be stuck in there. That's why I'm giving so much damn credit to NASCAR media at this point for sticking it out through this and giving us all the information for it, because I would be wanting to scratch and gouge my eyeballs and ears out, to get out of there. It's I'm just it is boring. I mean, it is. There's probably a million other things sports wise that you would want to be talking about with it right now. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, because we're just, I'm over it. Like I'm at the point now where I'm over it. It's interesting to me because I'm a NASCAR fan in that sense, and I want to know where the sport goes, and I know how important this is. Like, whichever way it goes, stuff's changing. Whether it's internally with NASCAR, with the teams, with the business model, with both of them, stuff's going to change. Whether it be as slow as this trial or as quick as an actual race, it will be. But I'm at this point, man, where it's just like, I do want them to pick up the pace. I want to see and hear what the hell Richard Childress is going to say. That will be fun. I hope. And again, I don't think it's going to be as explosive as a lot of people are saying. I don't think he's going to finish up and walk out of the courtroom and punch Steve Phelps on his way out or anything. I want to say one of the most entertaining parts of this whole thing, and Bob Pockrass had tweeted out about it, was that a dude dressed in Jordan gear was outside the courthouse as they were leaving and started playing the intro music that the Bulls used to play for Michael Jordan when he was playing in the NBA, which I thought was absolutely hysterical. Just from a shit posting side of things, I applaud that man. If I knew who he was, or he introduced himself to me, I would buy him a beer for doing that, especially in front of all of the NASCAR executives too. Because at this point, if there's anything that has kind of been the through line of the last month, maybe 2 months at this point, is that NASCAR leadership has made themselves the most unlikable pricks they possibly can through this. Again, it goes both ways. The teams are not innocent. Denny Hamlin certainly isn't innocent. Like I said yesterday, like, that's part of the reason that I kind of have grown to like Denny, is because he could be a prick like I can. But at the same time, the NASCAR executives, the leadership of NASCAR, has just made themselves so damn unlikable to the average person. And Eric brought this up on Monday during the show. Like, they've lost all of the court of public opinion outside of, whoever's licking the boot to save their job, basically. I know there's some that will, like, I'm trying to show both sides, at least, that like there are places they've won and stuff. I don't think that's necessarily falling into that category, but at this point, they probably will fight this out as long as they possibly can, because what do they have to lose when it comes to how their own client base views them, if they could even read it, right? I like this from Michael: make NASCAR good again, please. And that just means racing points internally, I'll take it no matter what. There outside of the trial, there was actual news today, by the way, when it came to NASCAR. A few things on the silly season front. Ty Dillon is back at Call League. Was there ever a doubt, at this point? But Gabehart being confirmed to be out at Joe Gibbs Racing is interesting. If you were watching NWP, which was on this channel Monday night, and if you haven't, I implore you to. It's really good conversation with the three of us on there. We had a super chatter, and we put them under reckless speculation just because we weren't sure in that moment. It was the first we were hearing about it. Basically, had broke the news on the show live in front of about 750 people. Like, hey, this is happening. We from the sounds of it, this is something that's been coming for a little while on the JGR front and on the Gabehart front. And the rumors are picking up that he's going to Spire. That's the rumor right now. To me, this is a much bigger deal than Rodney Childers, because when Rodney Childers went over, I think a lot of us thought, like, hey, this is one of the best crew chiefs of the last 25 or so years. This is a guy who was up there with Stewart Haas equipment with Kevin Harvick, and they were kind of propping that team up as it went. But he had never gotten his arms fully around this next gen car. Like, he'd been good, but nowhere near that elite level that he was with the Gen 6. Whereas with Gabehart, you have a guy who has won with this car, who has elevated teams at JGR with his presence because of how much he understands this car. And for him to go to Spire, and I guarantee you, Spire is probably spending the big bucks. That's the rumor right now. And hey, we didn't, the initial rumor seemed crazy. So talking rumors and reckless speculation under that banner, I think is okay. I think this is a much bigger deal than a lot of people are letting on. Because he could make some major changes pretty damn quickly. And Spire last year was, I still think, overperforming what many would think. I mean, Michael McDowell was a consistent top 15 or so guy last year for a lot of races. You improve that, and he could be running in the top 10 a lot more. Carson Hocevar was competing for wins. I mean, people seem to forget that he wasn't just, competing for the win at Michigan at the end. He was competing for the win at the 600. He was up front at Bristol with the likes of Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson. And now you add somebody, that has that real clout to build up this team. And that is huge for a driver who I think is going to take another step this year. Now, granted, I will admit, I am higher on Carson Hocevar than a lot of other drivers have been, or a lot of other people have been. I'm higher on him than probably a lot of young drivers right now. So maybe it's somewhere in the middle with that. But I do think that 77 team is going to probably take a pretty good jump up, maybe consistently, even when they're not going for wins, running top 15, being up in the points where McDowell was for a good portion of the year, or at least average running position, and not just so up and down roller coaster, but more steady. And then when you're steadily getting closer to the front, it's easier for you to be put in positions to win races. And that team, again, like I said, they were putting themselves in positions to win races. Nashville, for instance, ran second in that race. Looked like he could have won that, even with all the problems he's had. So I think this is a much bigger move and should be looked at as a much better big picture move than the Rodney Childers move was. Who knows what Daniel Suarez can do next year with that kind of backing? I of all the, it's kind of crazy to me, because if you told me this, a couple of years ago, that Michael McDowell, Carson Hocevar, Daniel Suarez, that Suarez would be my lowest ranked guy for expectations with those three in similar equipment, I would question you on that. But to me, I mean, this team is moving their way up. I want to see what Suarez can do next year. I definitely do. But Chris Gabehart, man, going there, and yeah, I think too, the back and forth with Chevrolet, and the connections that team has. I would say this is another this is I think a big loss for JGR. I don't think JGR is turning to RCR anytime soon. Like, this is not, they're a tier 1 team with Toyota, supplying engines and parts and supplies to the second tier Toyota team. Toyota won't allow them to become an RCR, if that makes sense. So, that part, I think, can be removed from the conversation with this move, but it's a head scratcher for a lot of people. I know there was some tension behind the scenes, at least from sources I've heard, with Gabehart and JGR. So it might have been like both sides saying, what, fine, like, it's better for both of us thing. But I can't blame people for having questions surrounding Joe Gibbs Racing right now. On the kind of lighter front, we did have some paint scheme news that popped up today. It's always kind of news when, not kind of, it's always news when the most popular driver. There, I'll make myself smaller so you can see it. Gets a new paint scheme. So I'm gonna have a not hot take, maybe mildly warm take. I don't think this is as bad as people are saying, but it could be way better. I saw Drive Through tweet this today, and I completely agree with him, especially with the mock-up he made for it. If you just took the yellow outline away from the 9 and then gave a little space for the blue line, I'd even say take the yellow off of the blue line in the middle on the door there. I think this scheme would be loved and would be awesome. Personally, I think if you just take the blue line off altogether, I actually think this scheme pops way better. But I don't think it's that bad compared to what I've seen other schemes be for Hendrick in the past. And I do want to, again, remind people, hold your horses for a little bit on Hendrick when it comes to their cars, because Hendrick mock-ups or does, the designs and the artwork they put out for it beforehand usually is not as good looking as the actual car itself. But again, I do think it's a step down from this year. I thought this year's the solid blue was really good. I will say one thing, and I'm gonna hammer this home forever with new schemes constantly. If it's the same sponsor, can we stop changing the paint scheme every year? I get little changes, right? Or changing stuff like once every couple years. I'm a big Dale Jr. fan. First, want to say 3 years of his career, the DEI deal that they had on the car was just like the 5 lines across the door, and they went around the front and the back of the car. And then 2003, and I have a handy die cast for you. You can see they turned it to in 2003 to an E on the side of it that kind of accomplished the same thing. You know, definitely major change in the sense of the design, but still kept the identity, and you didn't do it every year. Dale Earnhardt Incorporated kept that design from 2003 until it merged with Ganassi around, I believe, 2009. So, if I'd be okay if it was stuff like that, or like when they changed the scallops a little bit on Logano's car and then changed it a bit heading into the next gen, but they've kept it the same. I wish they would keep cars the same, have that continuity year over year, especially a scheme like Elliott's that last year. I thought, again, I don't think this year's is that bad, but a scheme like Elliott's last year, a solid blue car is very easy to pick out on television. It doesn't blend in with the pack as much. It's why Junior's Bud car, Gordon's Rainbow or Flame car, how the Lowe's car, the big orange with Home Depot and Tony Stewart, the Killer Bees and the yellow and black DeWalt that did change, but not majorly. Like, if you look at a lot of those 17 schemes for a while were very similar, even when they had minor changes to it. I wish we would keep that continuity going. And I liked when they did the invert too on like night races. And I wish they'd bring that back. I know Mark Martin, when he had Viagra, especially as his sponsor, they did like the invert scheme at night and it looked badass. And it's not make or break. The way the cars look doesn't change how they race. But maybe it's me being a bit old headish. I get that. Again, I am not as angry on it or against it as a lot of people are. I do want to catch up on the super chats and member chats and stuff. I see a lot of people have left their thoughts, and I want to just be able to catch you guys too. And I realize I apologize. I did not put you on screen in this stream. This is why I do off-season streams even when there's not big news stories, just because it gives me practice to not screw it up during the year like I tend to do. I will say, while I have a lot of you here, tomorrow, roughly sometime between 6:30 and 7:30, we'll start up again. Unless there's, again, nothing really to talk about. I'll probably go live earlier in the afternoon Friday. It's my wife's birthday, and we're going out for dinner that night. And I want to be able to talk about what happened, but I'm not going to make her wait to go out to a restaurant she really wants to go to. at like 9 o'clock at night with a baby and a family that's driven 600 miles to come into town. Again, I can be a prick at times, but I'm not a dick. I'm not that much of an asshole with it. So it'll be earlier. It might literally be when they let out of court, and we might basically be reading stuff that people are putting out as it's coming out. Um, so we'll probably do that. Yeah, we do have a reservation. Um, so probably early in the afternoon on Friday, and then kind of back to later, in the later in the day next week, as we've been doing so far. And another reminder, we will be doing an NWP more than likely when this thing gets concluded, whether it be settlement or anything else, or if it just goes on to another process and never ends. We'll at least talk about that. So keep an eye out. Plenty of stuff. I appreciate so many of you guys chilling on a beautiful Wednesday night. Man, I didn't think I would be doing streams this late in the year on Wednesday night still. Super chats here. Joshua Boston left a couple. I appreciate it. I see you every stream come in super early, either in the chat or super chat. So thank you for the support. Says, wow, Gabehart downgrades to Spire from JGR. I did not see that coming. The timing's rather peculiar. Not particularly peculiar too. Why announce this during the trial, even during a break? Was he a loose end? Who knows? Again, I think there was a lot of stuff behind the scenes going on, and this is kind of something that led to being inevitable. We'll probably find more details out about it in the coming weeks and months, I would assume. But also, you say, can I be a guest on NWP sometime next season, please? I appreciate the enthusiasm. We do not take requests for the most part from guests. I will say, if if you have people you want to see come on, let us know. But one of the things we take, and I think this goes for most shows, they kind of like not like angry with, but just sort of a like, don't do that thing is, and it's not like, not for like you guys in the audience. I get you guys are like having fun with it. Maybe at some point we'll do a fan stream and have people on. But one of the things that does kind of grind my gears is when somebody just comes up and it's like, hey, I'm doing this. I need to be on your, like, I had somebody once come up to me in a garage area. I won't say who it was. They came up to me and said, hey, I need you to free up like whatever date it was, because I have this, and this I'm publishing and I need to be on your show. And I was like, no, like, no, I'm not gonna, or like, hey, I need to promote my sponsors on this. So I know you have a guest, but like clear some space for me. And it's like, no, I know that's not what you meant. So like, but you'd be surprised how interesting people can be when they like expect you to just give them things at this point. Hunter Nixon says, I'm back. I've went back and watched the 2005 Daytona 500 to get ready for Daytona, and man, I forgot how fun that race was. I'm telling you, it is one of like, I cannot push that race enough to people to be like, you need to watch this race. It's everything. If you want to understand NASCAR in the 2000s, watch that race. All of the big players are up there, all of the big storylines and everything that makes that kind of 2003 to 2007 era pre-COT happen, and like define it, is all in especially the finishing 20 or so laps of that race. I love that race. It is one of my top 10, possibly top 5 favorite races of all time. I can't tell you guys enough to watch that. Joshua with another couple here says, Soundwave superior, NASCAR leadership inferior, Lord Megatron shall conquer, and the Steves have 0% chance survival. Decepticon take over NASCAR. And then says, Hamlin is Megatron's instrument of destruction. I take it you're a big Transformers fan. or at least have references to it. I find it funny. I think it's pretty funny. Let's see. Stevio says, I apologize on behalf of the chat to the guy who posted a super chat about Gabehart leaving JGR. Technically, that story broke on the iceberg first. Yeah. I mean, technically, that's why we will say reckless speculation on things, and it annoys people like, hey, like they said it's true. And it's like, well, it's reckless speculation until proven otherwise, which was the case this time, and it was proven otherwise. But yeah, I mean, that's why I said, like, weekly podcast guest at gmail.com. We might not talk about it on the show, but we will take an anonymous tip line on things going on. You don't have to tell us where you're from. It can be complete BS. We can literally, again, not talk about it on the show, but we will at least keep it in mind. Or you can just completely bullshit us. I don't care. It'll be fun to see the stories that come up with. But the thing is, it's like once we know who's sending the good information, you'll be anonymous with us. So doors open, or super chats too. Doors open. Let's see. Isaac says, which role would Gabehart be more likely to fill? Competition director or crew chief of the 7? I would assume probably a higher level role. That's what he was taking at JGR. I wouldn't think that he would downgrade necessarily career paths as much to be a crew chief for the 7. Maybe he takes both roles. It's kind of what he did with Ty Gibbs this summer. So I guess that could be a possibility. But I would think a higher end role and probably getting stuff more in order with that team the way that JGR has stuff in order. I mean, Spire has the vision that they want to be a top end team. They want to be up there one day with the Hendricks, the Gibbs, the Penskes. So I would not be surprised if he's pretty high up in that company. Fair enough. Terrible month for Denny. That is definitely the case as well. Let's see. Where did I leave off? Just got excused from jury duty, which seems timely. Hey, congratulations. Congratulations. I'm not going to bash anyone for wanting to get out of jury duty. I know it's like a civic duty and all that stuff, but I mean, all these states and federal government waste our money anyway with taxes. So like, you want to get out of doing stuff surrounding their system, be my guest. Let's see. Bailey says, watching 06, do you miss old Vegas? No, actually, no. That's one of the things from old NASCAR. Like, it wasn't as bad as maybe some of the other tracks at the time were racing wise, but it was not very good to watch for the most part, in my opinion. I think the new Las Vegas is much better. So there, anyone who says that I like everything exclusively from 2003 on back, I didn't like Las Vegas back then. I think it's way better now. I think it's way better now. I did see somebody, by the way, we're talking about cookie cutters, and it won't be a stream of mine unless I talk about Chicagoland Speedway. Bringing up that, Chicagoland, I believe, does not have progressive banking. At least when I checked, maybe it does, and I'm wrong, but I would assume the high side will be pretty powerful, especially later in runs in that race. And with how old the surface is and the harsh winters up in Northern Illinois, which I don't know if you saw, but Chicagoland Speedway on X put a post out that like that place is completely covered in snow and is super cold. Not going to do any favors to make the surface any easier to drive on. I'm really thinking this is going to be closer to the pre-super speedwayified Atlanta than it is to Kansas, which I'm okay with because I absolutely loved old Atlanta. My biggest, I've said it, and I think Eric has said something similar. We're on the same wavelength with this. The biggest problem a lot of us have, and a lot of people have with New Atlanta is that they didn't do it at Texas, because I think Texas would be popping. I mean, they're already having 100,000 people show up for what's generally mediocre races with some wild factor in it. If you had a super speedway at Texas Motor Speedway, they'd probably be reopening the backstretch stands, at least, especially if you had it only once a year, unlike twice a year like Atlanta, though they'd probably just add another race because tons of ticket sales. But there is that. But I do like the newer Vegas and Trex kind of like it. It's why I didn't like Kentucky all that much. They didn't have as much banking, and the racing wasn't my thing at Kentucky. If they made Kentucky like the configuration of Kansas, I think it'd be a pretty fun race. Let's see. Bank of Spire claims another soul. I tell you, they can outspend just about anybody, man. Thank you, Eric W, for the 10 gifted memberships, which, by the way, I won't specify what's going on, but we do have I believe we do have an e-ticket coming up on the IDK Player channel. So definitely check that out too. Those are always a lot of fun to do. I believe it's like about 2 weeks or so from now. I'm not sure about the full details. John will put them out when they're out, but we will be having an e-ticket before Daytona next year. That is 100% confirmed via me. Let's see. Hunter Nixon says easily Elliott's best scheme since 2022. Did not like 2024 or 2025. Fair enough. Speaking of which, I actually have the 2022 one right here. Oh, it's dusty. Hold on. Let's make this baby shine. Yeah, I have it right here. I think this is actually one of like the really good quality ones because this baby is heavy. So again, for those of you who say that I don't like Hendrick, I literally have like on my shelf behind me, I have a 21 Larson, a 22 Elliott that I just picked up, a 23 Byron, and then 24, and I believe I have a 25 Larson coming in the mail. So again, Napa know-how. That's right. Napa know. I miss those commercials, man. And then I feel this show has fallen from its original intention of discussing the best chicken-based restaurant location. So I'll hop on and rate the ship. I still like Chick-fil-A personally. Not a fan of Cane's. I know a lot of people down here are a fan of Raising Cane's. Not my deal. But yeah, we have not talked about chicken much as of late. We'll have to change that with NWP. I don't know if we'll do it for the end of lawsuit special or season 9. Jesus, we made it so far. Season 9 of NWP will premiere Wednesday, January 28th on this channel at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So check that out when it happens. I'm going to keep reminding you guys as the off season goes. We're going to have a whole lot of fun. And then one more popped in here, I believe, from M. Martin fan saying, go enjoy your wife's birthday and stream on Saturday sometime instead. Take Friday off. Well, again, she works during the day on Friday. So it'll be fine. Plus the kiddo usually is napping around the time that I'd be going live anyway. So I can jump on for about probably an hour or so, just like we are tonight. Which I think that's going to cut it tonight. So thank you guys so much for coming out. I appreciate it a ton. Again, we'll be live as long as there's stuff to talk about each day afterwards. And I just can't wait for Richard Childress to be on. So thank you guys so much for enjoying some of your Wednesday night with me. I will see you tomorrow. Later, y'all. Bye.